So recently, Neil deGrasse Tyson said something a lot of people have been waiting years to hear. He basically admitted that the conversation around aliens is changing because the evidence pipeline is finally getting better. Not just stories, not just fuzzy lights, but real measurements. And he said, in plain words, that if the evidence clears a high bar, he is ready to say yes. That is the shift. A scientist who has always asked for extraordinary evidence is now saying the tools exist to provide it. And if those tools deliver, he is not going to stand in the way. He will stand next to it and say, all right, there it is. Let me talk to you like we are just hanging out. No fancy intro, no spooky music. Here is the reality. There are two camps that have been shouting past each other for a long time. One camp says, people see things, pilots see things, millions of folks have had experiences. And you cannot ignore that much smoke. The other camp says, show me a clean picture. Show me multiple sensors. Show me something I can test. And then we will talk. What Neil just did is open the door between those rooms. He said the gear is finally good enough. The reporting pipelines are finally open enough, and the stigma is finally low enough that we can stop rolling our eyes and start collecting data like adults. Now, I get it. Some of you hear that and go, Joe, we have been here for years, man. But take a breath and think about what it takes for a mainstream scientist to stake that ground. The job of a scientist is to be slow, careful, and boring in the best possible way. It is not because they hate wonder. It is because they want wonder with legs. They want wonder you can set on a lab bench. So when a guy like Neil says the door is open, that matters. That is permission for a lot of other people in a lot of other labs to walk through it without worrying they're going to end their career with one sentence. Here's how I see it, and I think Neil would agree on the basic shape if you want to prove there are visitors. You need 3 layers of evidence stacked. So tight, no one can pull them apart. First layer is the sight. Clear eyes on target, multiple angles, long enough to rule out birds, balloons, and bugs. Second layer is the sensors. Radar, infrared, visible light, and whatever other instruments you can bring to the party, all seeing the same thing at the same time. Third layer is the physics. Numbers that make sense, not a jump cut on a phone, but a measured change in speed. A measured change in direction, with the errors accounted for. When all 3 layers line up, even the hardest skeptic has to stop and say, okay, what is that? And this is the big thing Neil admitted that a lot of folks miss. The bottleneck has never been human curiosity. The bottleneck has been the tools. If you go back 10, 15 years, we did not have millions of high-quality cameras in people's pockets. We did not have private companies throwing up fleets of satellites. We did not have machine learning that can comb through hours of sky footage in minutes and flag the weird stuff. We did not have pilots encouraged to report without getting roasted in the locker room. Now we have all of that, and it changes the game. Let me break it down in a way that respects both sides. A pilot saying, I saw something I cannot explain, is valuable. But your brain, my brain, every brain is a pattern machine. We can be fooled. So a good report is the start, not the finish. What Neil is saying is, pair that report with a camera that never blinks, pair it with radar that does not get nervous, pair it with a thermal sensor that does not care about rumors, and now you have something you can hand to a lab. And if the lab still shrugs, cool, we learned something. If the lab leans forward and goes, this is still weird, then you keep pulling the thread. A lot of folks hear the word unidentified and jump straight to alien. Neil is careful there, and honestly, we should all be. Unidentified means exactly what it says. Not identified, it does not mean from another star. But here's the second half of that sentence that people forget. Sometimes the box you use to classify things is too small. Sometimes you build your categories around the stuff you already know, and the universe taps you on the shoulder and goes, hey man, there is a bigger category out here you have not even named yet. That is why you keep the door open. Not because every light in the sky is a visitor, but because some tiny fraction could be the start of a brand new box. That is what rigorous curiosity looks like. Now, let me talk about what would close the case for me, and from how he has spoken about it for Neil too. I want you to picture a normal day on this planet. Not a staged event, not a show, a normal day. A network of ground cameras is scanning the sky. Commercial planes are doing their routes, their instruments recording. Like always. Military radar is painting the map because that is what it does 24 hours a day. Satellites are looking down because there are many now, not just a few, in the middle of all that. Something shows up. It is not on a map. It is not a known aircraft. It moves in a way that makes no sense for a balloon, a bird, or a bug on a lens. The ground cameras catch it from 3 cities at once. The timestamps match, the shapes match, the distance and size work out when you triangulate. The radar catches it at the same time. The thermal sensors show a temperature profile that is not a plane engine, not a rocket, not a known balloon system. The satellites looking down pick it up passing through their field of view, and when you line up all those clocks, they agree within a blink. Then, as the cherry on top, a piece of it comes down and you can pick it up, you can touch it, you can put it on a table, and when a serious lab hits it with every test they have, the fingerprint does not match any known production on Earth. That is it. That is game over. You do not need a press conference. You need data. You need that stack. You give that to a guy like Neil, and he is not going to argue. He is going to say what he has always said, just with a different conclusion. Extraordinary evidence needs to be met. If you meet it, welcome to the club. So why has that not happened yet? Here is another thing people do not like to hear. The world is messy. Sensors fail. Clocks drift. Cameras smear when they pan too fast. People hoax things because they are bored. Governments hide things because that is what governments do sometimes for reasons that are actually responsible, and sometimes because someone is just covering their butt. And in that mess, it is easy to take a weird video and make a huge claim. It is also easy to take a real mystery and roll your eyes, because the last 40 videos were nonsense. The only way out is to build a pipeline that is boring, automatic, and relentless. Capture, tag, timestamp, cross-check, release, capture, tag, timestamp, cross-check, release. Every day, everywhere you can. That is where I think Neil's admission lands. He is not saying aliens are here. He is saying we finally have the machinery to know one way or the other. That is big, because once you say that, you have to follow through. You have to fund the cameras, you have to open the data, you have to teach people how to report without turning it into a circus. You have to reward the folks who take the slow route. The slow route wins. It always does. It just does not feel as exciting the first week. Then, 10 years later, you look back and go, thank God they took their time. Let us talk about the scale of the place we live. I will keep it simple because you do not need fancy numbers to feel this. Look up at the night sky. Every point that looks like a star is a sun. Many of those suns have planets, not a handful. Many. The idea that one of those planets might have life is not wild. The idea that some of that life might be curious enough to build, travel, and look back at us is not wild either. But space is huge, even if there are neighbors. Getting from there to here is not a walk down the street. So 2 things can be true at once. 1, life out there is likely. 2, proof of visitors here is hard. That is the tension we live in, and that is why standards matter. Where does the military fit into all this? And why does Neil talk about pilots so much? Pilots are trained observers. They are calm under pressure. Their machines measure things with precision. But even pilots chase illusions when the atmosphere plays tricks. Even pilots see glare. Even radar gets fooled by temperature layers. So, yes, take them seriously. And yes, pair them with instruments that do not care about tricks. Neil's point, and I agree with it, is that we should move from stories to systems. Stories get you to look up. Systems give you the answer. I want to bring in one more piece a lot of folks skip. Psychology. Not in a dismissive way, in a human way. If you see something strange in the sky and your heart rate spikes, you are not framing a perfect shot. You are reacting. The brain fills gaps when it is stressed. That does not make you a liar. It makes you human. The solution is not to shame people. The solution is to build tools that do not panic. The solution is to capture the moment whether your hands are shaking or not. That is a camera on a fixed mount. That is a network of sensors that never sleeps. That is software that flags the anomaly without calling it a visitor or a bird until the math has its say. What about the folks who say everything unexplained is a secret project? That is the other corner of the ring. I am sure there are secret projects. We pay a lot of money in a lot of countries for people to build strange things and keep them quiet. But here is the tell. Secrets leak patterns before they leak facts. They show up in budgets. They show up in test ranges at the same times. They show up as unknowns that stop being unknowns once the project is revealed. If the thing you keep seeing never fits those patterns, if it pops up in places in ways that make no sense even for a hidden program, then the secret project answer starts to wobble. Give it time. Patterns tell the truth. Another thing Neil has been clear about is the difference between being open-minded and being so open-minded your brain falls out. You can be excited. I am excited. You can be respectful of people's experiences. I am respectful. And at the same time, you can say, let us do the work. You can say, show me the stack. That is not cold. That is love for the subject. That is respect for the idea that if this is real, it deserves proof that will outlive all of us. Proof you can teach to a kid 100 years from now, and it will still stand. So where do we go from here? Here is a practical path. First, normalize reporting. If you see something strange, there should be a simple, no-stigma way to share it with people who can check it. Second, harden the sky with sensors, not just at air bases, but in cities, in the countryside, on boats, on mountaintops. Third, open the data where it is safe to do so. Sunlight makes nonsense evaporate and makes good data sing. Fourth, build public challenges with prizes for explanations that hold up. You think it is a bird? Prove it with a model and a match, not a shrug. You think it is a drone show. The signatures, you think it is a visitor. Okay, here is the standard. Meet it, and here is where Neil's voice helps. He can say this stuff with the weight of science behind him. He can tell the hard skeptics, stop dunking on people, and start reviewing the data. He can tell the wild-eyed folks, stop jumping steps and help build the steps. He can tell institutions, release what you can and stop hiding behind the idea that people will panic. People do not panic when you treat them like adults. They panic when you lie, or when you condescend, or when you let rumors be the only thing filling the silence. Do I think aliens are real? I think life out there is likely. Do I think we have proof of visitors here? Today, I have not seen the stack I just described. Do I think we could see it in our lifetime? Yes, because the pipes are finally in place, and that is the core of what Neil just admitted. We have moved from a world of bar stories and blurry lights to a world where a serious answer is possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. And that is enough to aim the cameras, to wire the radars, to get the software ready, and to tell the world, if something shows up, we will know. I want to talk to the kid in the back of the room who loves this stuff. This is your field now. If you want to be part of it, study the tools, learn how cameras lie and how to make them tell the truth, learn how radar works, learn how heat signatures behave in different air, learn statistics so you can tell the difference between a real pattern and a brain chasing clouds. Respect the mystery, but respect the math more. Because the day the answer arrives, it will arrive wrapped in math. And you are going to want to be fluent enough to unwrap it with your own hands. And to the folks who roll their eyes and say, this is a waste of time, let me offer you a different angle. Even if every single weird video turns out to be a balloon, a drone, a bird, or a bug, we still win by building the pipeline. We still improve our eyes on the sky. We still get better at tracking things that matter. Like junk in orbit, or storms, or the health of the planet. We still train a generation to be curious and careful at the same time. There is no downside to doing this. Right, something else Neil touched on that I think is vital, is humility. We have a long history of declaring what is impossible, only to be corrected by reality. Heavier. Than air flight used to be a joke. Then it was a miracle. Now it is an annoyance when your flight is late. The phone in your pocket would have been magic to your grandparents. The line between impossible and obvious is thinner than we like to admit. Humility does not mean you say yes to every wild claim. Humility means you say maybe, and you do the work to find out. Let me give you a simple test I use all the time. If tomorrow you showed me a video that made me want to jump out of my chair, my first question would be, who else saw it, and how did they see it? If 5 different instruments from 3 different places all saw the same thing, I am listening. If one camera on a shaky hand saw it, I am smiling and asking for more. And that is not cynicism. That is a way to protect your own excitement, so you do not burn it out on stuff that cannot carry the weight you put on it. Now, there is a fear people do not say out loud. Some folks are scared that if we finally prove there are visitors, the world will spin out. Religion will crumble. Governments will collapse. People will freak out. I do not buy it. Humans are weirdly sturdy. We adapt, we sit down at breakfast the next day and still eat eggs. We file our taxes, we go to the gym, we call our mom, big news lands, and then life continues. The thing that wrecks trust is not truth, it is being treated like you cannot handle the truth. And if the answer turns out to be no visitors, no crafts, just a lot of misidentifications, and a handful of secret projects, I am okay with that too. You know why? Because the hunt is honorable. Looking carefully at the world is not a waste of time. Teaching people to be curious and careful is never a waste of time. If the answer is no, then we clean the table, we say good game, and we keep looking at other beautiful mysteries. There is no shortage. So where does that leave us with Neil deGrasse Tyson? It leaves us with a guy who's been consistent about the rules of evidence, but now fully acknowledges that the playing field has changed. The tools are here, the reports are getting better, the stigma is lower. You can be honest about your curiosity without losing your footing. That is new, and whether you like Neil or not, whether you think he is too strict or not strict enough, that admission is a big step for the entire conversation. I want to sketch what the day of clarity looks like, so we can all agree on the finish line. A clear object appears, tracked by multiple independent systems, observed by trained people and unblinking sensors, recorded with enough resolution to measure size, distance, and motion. And then, ideally, it leaves something behind we can touch. That something gets tested by multiple labs that do not talk to each other, and they all come back with the same conclusion. Not ours, not natural, not a simple trick. When that day comes, the debate ends. Until that day, the debate is how to build the road to that day faster and cleaner. I can already hear some of you saying, "Joe, this is all talk. Give me something to hold." Fair. Here's what you can hold. A plan. You can hold a set of rules for what counts. You can hold a promise to take reports seriously and to test them seriously. You can hold a commitment to tell the truth even when the truth is boring, and you can hold the knowledge that serious people, including the guys who used to wave this off, are now on board with doing it the right way. And if you want a little poetry to carry with you, here it is. Every night, the sky tells the same old story in new ways. Sometimes it is clouds, sometimes it is satellites, sometimes it is a meteor burning up after a very long journey, a pebble turned into a flash of light, and maybe, one night, it is more. Maybe it is something that turns all of us into kids again, staring up with our mouths open. If that night is coming, we will not catch it with wishful thinking. We will catch it with patience, with cameras that do not blink, with radars that do not care about rumors, and with a culture that values the truth over being first. That is the lane I am in. Curious, hopeful, allergic to nonsense, hungry for the moment when the data stacks so high you can climb it. And that is, in his own careful way, the lane Neil just stepped into with the rest of us. Not a confession that aliens are here, an admission that we are finally in a place where we can find out with confidence. So what do we do right now tonight? We build, we fund the boring stuff. We celebrate the people who do the boring stuff. Well, we keep an open mind without letting our brains fall out. We make room for reports without feeding a circus. We hold each other to standards that protect the subject we love. And we remember that being wrong with integrity is better than being right by accident, because the day this breaks, if it breaks, it will break for the people who did the work. I will leave you with this. If you are the person who captures the moment, it will probably not feel like a movie. It will feel like a notification on a dashboard that you almost ignored. It will feel like a graph that does not look like the other graphs. It will feel like a dot on a map that should not be there, and yet is, and then is again and again. And again, that is how truth usually arrives. Quiet, consistent, undeniable. And when it does, even the loudest skeptic will say what Neil promised to say, "Okay, there it is. Until then, keep looking up, keep your feet on the ground, and keep your standards high." That is how we honor the question. That is how we make sure the answer, whatever it is, stands for the next 100 years. If you love this topic, this is the moment you have been waiting for. Not because someone on television shouted, but because the people who care about proof are finally standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who care about wonder and saying the same thing. Bring the data, let the truth in, and let the chips fall where they actually fall.